Hello and welcome to another Bespoke Unit fragrance review. In this video we shall be analysing a classic from the 90s, Boss Bottled, by none other than Hugo Boss. As with every fragrance review, we shall be using a Bespoke Unit fragrance formula. This is a pre-filled digital version that I filled out when I tested this earlier, but you can download a blank version to use at home. Just go to the link below and you'll be able to download and print it for yourself. Released in 1998, Boss Bottled caused quite a stir. In fact, it's one of their many ranges of fragrances that have endured throughout the decades and has received a number of spin-offs accordingly. Personally, I find this quite a nostalgic fragrance because I wore it for a while between the ages of 17 to 18, 19. In fact, it was the mother of a girlfriend who gave it to me at the time. So it's quite a nostalgic fragrance that sends me back because olfactory memory is so powerful. Nevertheless, I'm going to review this as objectively as possible. I'm going to take apart its composition, seasonality, third-party feedback, like any other fragrance. So without further ado, let's give this a try. So I already tested a fragrance today, so I'm not going to use this hand, I'm going to use this hand. So if you see me using this hand, shout at the screen and say, Charles, you're doing it wrong. We're going to give it 2 sprays. Very nice. Let's give it a sniff. So we open on something which is surprisingly fruity for this fragrance. In fact, when I started smelling it again, I didn't expect that. We open on sort of apple and plum, so this sort of nice fruity fruit basket accord on one side, with of course a classic bergamot, but it's all countered with a warm rounded cinnamon, which makes it sharp but not overly so. But what's really interesting is when we start to cut to the heart, because straight away we have these notes that emerge that remind me of freshly cut wood. You got this almost sawdust note coming through, which then comes together as mahogany, which is paired with geranium, sort of gourmand vanilla, and a sweet, kind of oily targete, which I'm not sure how you pronounce in English, which is a wildflower, which I think is orange. So yeah, it's very woody, but we still have these kind of aromatic notes dancing around, a bit of gourmandise, a bit of floral notes as well, and then sort of echoes of the previous fruity notes from the head. We let that sit for a while, and we'll eventually get to the base. We're at the base, which again is taking that mahogany and drawing it through so it lingers and it endures a little longer, and we're introducing some cedarwood and some sandalwood in there as well. So we have this nice sort of workshop kind of vibe going on with a little bit of vetiver, which makes it quite earthy as well. So it's kind of like walking through the woods on a hot day or in the spring. It's a bit dewy and it's sort of all the odours of the wood are starting to get into the air as the water evaporates and the sort of sun cuts through between the leaves. Alternatively, you could see it as a classic woodwork, not lumberjack, I'm talking about sort of treated wood. It's been cut, it's been dried, and kind of dusty, but very, very pleasant as well, thanks to those gourmand vanilla notes. So with the life cycle, we have something that's really enjoyable here. It starts off with something very fruity, and then we have a little peak of cut wood, which then leads us into the mahogany. We have the vanilla, geranium, and then we end with the cedarwood, sandalwood, and vetiver. For the reasons I mentioned earlier, the sort of woodwork vibe, sort of dewy forest, I'd say this is something that is best suited for the milder months. It kind of really gets out there. It seems to work quite well in cool humidity and would be perfectly wearable as well during winter. But for summer, I wouldn't really find this to be a spectacular choice. It may lack that character needed to break through the heat. Nevertheless, this is something that can still be worn very well in the sunshine. In fact, it kind of reminds me of a spring afternoon, late spring afternoon in the garden. So next subject is the wake and strength. Here I think bottled doesn't quite perform justly. It should give us a little more. The sillage is very good. It leaves a lovely trail, and the projection is quite decent. I mean, it doesn't really have these tantalizing hints and hidden characteristics, apart from maybe a couple of vanilla notes. So you'd want it to project a little bit more, because it's not going to be hiding anything when you get closer. Or vice versa. In fact, maybe you want it to project less because you don't want to reveal anything at a distance, so there's a surprise when someone comes up close. Nevertheless, where it's kind of let down is the longevity. Even back when I wore it in my younger days and now, I find that it doesn't really perform very well. You spray someone before going to work, and before you get to around the lunch break, it's already fading and there's only a few woody notes left, but then again they're kind of a shadow of what they used to be. Nevertheless, because its sillage and projection work quite well, maybe this is something you could wear during shorter periods of time, maybe in the evening, although we'll talk about its sort of best times of day to be worn a little later. With regards to the third-party feedback, people tend to quite like bottled, although they're not wowed by it either. Some people find it kind of the warmth, the woodiness. They find it really subtle, very relaxing, very soothing, and just gives them desire to sort of nuzzle up quite close to it. This is something that might be quite desirable. For example, a romantic eau de toilette that you'd wear on a date. Then again, there are people that argue that it's too faint. It doesn't seem to be lacking. It doesn't seem to be having that character that you need, that sort of power that you'd want on a fragrance that you wear on a daily basis. They find it to be not lacking in character, but just lacking in strength, which kind of leads back to what I was saying in the wake and strength earlier. So let's talk about this fragrance's impressions. With regards to age range first, although I wore this when I was a late teen, I'd say that this is more appropriate for people in their 30s. It seems to have more mature woodwork connotations that you prefer maybe after the 30 mark. Nevertheless, it could definitely be worn by someone in their 20s or in their teens, or maybe someone in their 40s. But I'd say if I were to choose an age range, this is definitely more of a 30s fragrance, maybe 40s as well. With regards to the time of day, although this can be worn all day, this does perform actually quite well during the night. Because of these woody notes, you could just imagine wearing this on an autumn evening or winter evening, and it kind of reminds you of a log fire burning in a wooden cabin. That is kind of a contradiction to my next point, in that the occasion best suited to wear this fragrance, I would say, is the office. Although it could be fine as a date fragrance, it does lack that character you'd want to impress someone, and it doesn't seem to be as laid back as you want for a casual fragrance or a fragrance for going out. So this is something that would be perfectly fine in the office. In fact, it's so inoffensive that I think that it'd be quite popular, maybe not get compliments, but be enjoyed. Which leads on to my next comment about the masculinity. It's kind of moderate and it's not overly. I mean, we have these woody notes, but it stays quite subtle. So it's quite a moderately masculine fragrance rather than overbearing and macho. So inevitably we move on to the presentation. This bottle is interesting. It's very understated. It's not bland, but it doesn't seem to be giving you much of a hint on what to expect. Most fragrance bottles, they tend to give you these little hints with the color of their glass or the style of some sort of association of what this fragrance is trying to be, what its identity is. Here, this is very understated, very clean, very elegant, and we don't know what to expect. Boss bottle being, you know, very dominating name, very strong name, very assertful name. It just, all it has embossed on the glass is Boss. And on the other side we have Sob Oghe. So we got Hugo Boss written backwards, so when you turn it this way, you can see through the glass at the back, Hugo Boss. The cap is made out of plastic, which is a bit of a shame. Some silver metal would have probably been nicer here, and the atomizer seems to work quite well. It lays it on a little bit thick for my taste, but it doesn't put on too much at the same time. The dispersal is quite nice, and it is quite an accurate and decent atomizer to use, so you could use this at a medium to long distance. I wouldn't do it too close because it'll, like I said, lay it on a little bit thick. The packaging is, well, now I dare say it, a little bit on the bland side, but it's still quite effective. You have sort of a silhouette of the bottle shape here with Boss, Hugo Boss, which is exactly what you should expect to see when you look at it this way. But on the back, what's quite interesting is that you have the top, heart and base notes that they officially released, which very few fragrances actually put on their packaging. So it's interesting that they would do that, and maybe it's because this is kind of lacking in character, that in order to know what am I supposed to expect from this, you have a look and go, oh yeah, alright, okay, we have apple, geranium, cinnamon and central woody notes. Although they break it down very simply, I'd say there's a lot more going in here than they claim. This leads us finally to value for money. Now, it depends where you get this, but we were able to find it for as little as $35 for 100 milliliters, which is 3.4 ounces. If you check the link below, you'll see a trusted retailer offering what we found to be currently the best price. We find this to be offering quite good value for money. It stays in a very reasonable price range, perhaps because it's an entry-level designer fragrance. Nevertheless, you will be getting a decent quality out of this, and as I said earlier, a very pleasant composition, even if it doesn't last very long, which means you might end up using more than you want on a daily basis. To conclude, Boss Bottled is a safe choice. It is very conservative, very classic and quite elegant fragrance, which some may claim is lacking character, but I think that there is something going on in there which is very interesting indeed. These freshly cut wood accords with a little bit of mahogany, cedar and sandal is very enticing, with a little bit of gourmand vanilla in there, as well as some floral geranium notes. So this is something that, if you're looking for a clean, classic and versatile fragrance, Boss Bottled is probably one that you should give a try. My name is Charles Philippe, and that's all from me today. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please smash those like and subscribe buttons, and head below, give us a comment, tell us what you think. Have you tried this? Do you like it? What do you think of it? And if you have any questions, let us know in the comments. Finally, head in the description and you'll see there is Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Like us on those and come visit us at Bespoke Unit. You'll see plenty of content relating to improving your men's lifestyle. Again, I'm Charles Philippe. Take care, until next time.